to Brain Balance Live, where we come together each week to discuss strong connections with our neurodiverse children. Each week we go over new tools that you can put in your parenting tool belt. I am Jessica Farmer of Farmer Loves Phonics. I'm a fellow parent and literacy advocate, and this is Heather Wells. She is our lovely expert from the Brain Balance Centers near you in Texas. She is a therapist, certified cognitive specialist, and national autism speaker. Hi, Heather. How are you today?
Doing well. We need to build an ark. It has been raining of course, living in the Houston area, that's to be expected. But no, doing great. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. It is raining here in Florida a lot as well, so I hope the rain is good and that you needed the rain. We could use the rain too. There's been some dry spells, so.
Yeah, no, I enjoy the rain. That some people think that makes me weird, but I actually like it.
I like it too.
Yeah. But today we're talking about hidden sensory issues that impact emotions, behavior, and attention. And so many times when families come in to see us, they are not at all suspecting sensory issues. And I totally get why, because I think there's this stereotypical depiction of sensory issues. I mean, this, covering your ears, or issues with tags or seams, or, there are certain things that kind of jump out at us, but we're going to do a deep dive and talk about how some of these things are almost invisible. I had almost invisible struggles as a kid myself, sensory wise. So do you, as with your years working with kids, and of course you're a mom too, in mom circles, have you had conversations where it kind of seems like there's a certain view of sensory issues, or did that not really come up that much?
I think in the last few years especially, it's become more normalized to talk about sensory issues, where I feel as when I was a child, that was not something really discussed. But I definitely have had students that have sensory issues, like school uniform requiring certain shirts, the tags and the material being itchy and that bothering students. And even I noticed that in my own kids sometimes as well.
Yeah. So there are just so many different types of sensory issues, and some of them are not the things where you see, oh, they don't want their hands dirty. They don't like that particular shirt, and getting dressed in the morning is a war. There are so many other things. And so we're going to go ahead and jump on in to the first slide. And this is just to say, if you look at, and we didn't invent the iceberg analogy, but what we see on the surface, we might see emotional dysregulation, tantrums, defiant behavior, being scattered, disorganized, inattention, distractibility, issues with academics. But a lot of these kids may make good grades. So it's not about the grade, but what is under the surface, those are symptoms. We talk all the time about how behavior is communication. Why are they having the tantrums? Why are they looking out the window during school instead of paying attention? It may not be ADHD. Why are they being defiant? I feel so out of control of my body and my sensory motor world, I'm going to seek it in inappropriate ways. That is one of many reasons defiance can happen. So from the bottom up, this is how our brain develops. We have primitive reflexes. Dr. Brian and I have done shows about primitive reflexes, and I have to pick and choose when I have a short time with y'all. But just know that if these are things that we have when we're born that are supposed to go away, and if they don't, you can just bet on sensory challenges. In fact, retention of primitive reflexes is tied to learning struggles, autism, ADHD, etc., lots of social, emotional, behavioral struggles. But look, sensory processing and the gross and fine motor under the surface, we learn first in our sensory motor system, and it translates into cognitive development on a base level. Think about when you're learning to move around your world. And I learn that if I push something this hard, that's what happens. I'm learning cause and effect. I have an impact on the world. I'm walking to the door. I am using my visual perception, my body awareness, my equilibrium to know when I'm approaching it. And I predict when I should reach out and grab the handle to open the door. Now I'm learning prediction. When I can predict my world, I don't feel as anxious. It just goes on and on. So I just wanted to show you that these are absolutely the foundation of development, which leads us right into the next slide, where we're looking at, there are several different components of sensory processing. We have discrimination, and that is accuracy. A prime example of issues with discrimination might be a child with dyslexia, where they hear good foot and it gets mishmashed in their head and it comes out good, and then it's going to lead to issues sounding out words, spelling, and so on. Modulation is a how much issue. This is the one that we probably is more of the stereotypical. How much or how little do you take in? I'm sensitive to sound. I cover my ears. The tags and seams that we talked about. I don't like my hands to be dirty or sticky, icky. That kind of thing. I'm taking in too much or too. On the flip side of that, one thing we don't think about, one thing that can look like ADHD, or it can be ADHD plus this, and this part gets missed, is I am undermodulated. In other words, Jessica's my teacher and she keeps saying, Heather, answer the question. And I am not taking in enough of that input. And so, and I'm glancing out the window. It doesn't even register that she's calling on me. And that can cause, that would absolutely very much look like inattentive ADHD, or it could look like combined. We'll talk about that in a moment. But there are many components, and it's not just the 5 senses that we learn in pre-K. I think a lot of us learn sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. Mm-hmm. We also have equilibrium and body awareness. We have internal part of the sensory system. When am I hungry? When am I full? When do I need to go to the bathroom? And so on. And if I'm able to process that, yay, happy. You see that brain and that heart are all smiles and hugging it up. But if I have issues in any of these areas, the other one being planning, sensory motor planning. I just talked about planning when to open the door. So if you have kids with apraxia or dyspraxia in their motor movements, it could be speech, apraxia of speech as a diagnosis or without, or it could be, there is a ton of research about the link between developmental coordination disorder, which is a sensory motor planning issue, and dyslexia, ADHD, other learning struggles. If I have issues in any of those areas, any 3 of those areas, any combination with any part or parts of the sensory system, I am going to have issues. It might be learning issues. It could be attention. It could be executive functions like working memory, which I won't go into. I touch on that quite a bit throughout different shows. Impulse control, cognitive flexibility, social skills. A very obvious example of this would be, I have her body awareness. I don't know where I end and I begin. And Jessica begins and I'm in her grill and she's like, girl, give me 2 inches. Missing social cues or reading and things that aren't even there, which leads to rejection sensitivity that we've talked about. But emotional dysregulation, Reichman released research in 2017, although there are many, many, many studies to back this up. Issues in the sensory system are a leading cause of emotional and behavioral issues. So, and when we talk about moving the body, I'm just going to say this about the motor part of the system real quick. That is more than just physical health. That is more than just endorphin release. When we engage our large muscle groups, we have 200 million neurons that fire off from the back of the brain that's helping me use those muscles, the cerebellum, to the other parts of my brain that help me with reading, writing, math, spelling, problem solving, creativity, impulse control, social skills, etc. Because that sends dopamine. Guess what ADHD medication does? It's a dopamine release. Well, here you get it with the gross motor system. It helps regulate serotonin, oxygen, blood flow, glucose, all the nutrients our brains need to function optimally. Impacts 75 to 80% of all cognitive functions. And, we should know how important movement is for more than just motor skills by the very fact that the cerebellum is about 10% of the brain's mass and it has 90% of the brain cells. Wow. That is for more than movement. So that's why movement breaks, y'all. If you're having trouble with homework time, movement breaks. Go out in the backyard, play catch while you practice the spelling words or, the state capitals. All right, let's move on. We're going to break this down further. Okay. Now, there are 4 quadrants here. We all have a sensory threshold. Okay. We all need enough sensory information to be alert and attentive and engaged and not bored and not checked out. But but not so much that it's overwhelming. And so all the systems are working together to get me into that sweet spot. I'm alert and engaged. I can get into that state of flow without being overwhelmed, without being understimulated. If one part of the system's not doing its job, sometimes another part of it says, I got to step up, and I have poor visual perception. Now my auditory takes in more information. That's exactly what my brain did when I was a kid. I was legally blind, which is acuity, not the brain not knowing how to process it, although it moved into that once my eyes started working. But I could hear if someone was singing 1/16 of a note off key. I don't know that that's a gift. I just could. I could listen to someone play something on the piano and sit down and play it. My auditory happened to work to my advantage, but a lot of times it's taking in and things seem very loud, because the auditory is saying, visual, you're not doing your job, so now I have to do more work, and that leads to an auditory sensitivity. We have a lot of kids where the accuracy is very good, but they have sensitivity because the auditory is overcompensating. Anyway, 4 quadrants here. In the bottom left, this is, in my experience, what most people think of with sensory is sensory sensitivity, because there are the overt signs of it. Covering your ears, the wars in the morning to figure out what will this kid wear. Not the right socks. It feels twisted. It's too loose. It's too tight. I won't wear jeans. I won't wear tags. I don't want to get my hands, messy. But here, it's a passive way of handling it. It doesn't mean that they're lashing out in these moments. They're sensitive to it. They have discomfort, but they're not lashing out about it. On the bottom right, also, now I actively avoid it. I don't just do this, but this is where you might see tantrums. Look at this little girl holding onto this pole for all it's worth. Do not make me go into that party. It's going to be loud, and there's going to be a lot of movement. It's going to be very overwhelming. And one little tip I want to say is that, how do you know if something is a true meltdown or a tantrum? A tantrum can be sort of manipulation. It can be a means to an end. I'm trying to work you. A tantrum will stop if nobody's paying attention, usually. You step out of the room, they're done. They're not kicking and crying and screaming. And then you come back in and then they start throwing the fit again. They're working it. A meltdown from these kinds of issues, it doesn't matter if anybody's paying attention or not. I am up to here and I don't have the toolkit to handle it, and it's going to go no matter what. Those kids need empathy and comfort. That is not misbehavior at all. That is the easiest way to know the difference. But another way you can tell this one is you see that they'll seek to reduce exposure or avoid it altogether, or to make it more predictable. If you have kids who just keep asking, when is grandma coming over? When is that happening? I thought you said 5 minutes. How much longer? What's going on? Da, da, da. I am trying to predict when that ball's going to drop, because I'm kind of bracing for it. When. Anything where they're seeking predictability. If most of us benefit from structure and routine, if your kids need it on a different level, there's a very good chance that it's sensory related. Of course, there's more than one thing that causes that. But that is often will just look like anxiety or emotional dysregulation. Why are they having that? The why matters. Okay. Now, so those kids have a low threshold, and we've looked at 2 different ways they regulate it. Now, what about the kids who have a high threshold? I need lots and lots of input. And by the way, we can have a high threshold for certain kinds of sensory stimuli and a low threshold for others. A lot of kids need a lot of proprioceptive body awareness input. When I was little, because I was legally blind and my equilibrium was a mess, a way I regulated, and of course at the time I didn't know why I was doing it, I rubbed my arm all the time. I used like tactile and proprioceptive input, because the visual and the equilibrium wasn't going to get it done. I would fall asleep every night rubbing that little silky strip of the blanket on my cheek. Mm-hmm. I was looking for a way to get more sensory input. But poor registration, these are kids who miss stimuli. They might be slower to respond. This is an example of where the child may not even respond when you call their name. They may not be ignoring you. And it can look like that. It can look like defiance. A lot of times these kids are thought to have lower intellect. This has nothing to do with intellect. Maybe they are slower processing. Maybe they have an accuracy issue and it's kind of getting mumbo jumbo. But if I knew what you were saying, I would know the answer. Mm-hmm. Or I could be really creative and problem solve through it. So these often, this can very much, you can see how on the left, both of these can look like ADHD, because not responding at all can be, you're just checked out and daydreaming. Whereas I'm sensitive to it. I get distracted by who's knocking, who's crinkling paper, what's going on over there. And that also looks like ADHD. But how they play out is different. Sensory seeking, this also can look like ADHD because it can look like impulse control issues. It can look like hyperactivity. I need a lot of input to feel engaged. And so when I take off running, every time my foot pounds the pavement, I feel my body better. I'm getting body awareness input. I want to turn cartwheels. I want to hang upside down from the couch. I want to climb on the outside of the stairwell. And you're like, that's not safe. If that sensory seeking behavior, they are missing sensory stimuli, so then they pursue it in ways that they hope will register for them. But sensory seeking kids, this is tied in the research to creativity and intelligence. That is not to say there are issues with intelligence in these other quadrants, but there are specific research linking this. Curiosity and wanting to see how things work and play and manipulate and just really engaging with the world. But it can also look like banging your head against the wall or rocking. Tap, 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 your foot or your fingers. My dad, when he lost half his brain to a tumor, we were sitting at a red light. I was taking him to a doctor's appointment, and my car was shaking like this. Like, you would have thought I had the most boom and bass system. And my dad was a shade tree mechanic, and and he would teach me stuff growing up. I was so proud of myself. I said, Dad, do you feel that? I think my car is missing. I meant, like the idling roof. And then it just stopped. And then it started again. And he was in the back seat because my mom was in the passenger seat beside me. He was seeking proprioceptive input, but he could not stand light or sound after his tumor. So then he was filling in that gap and getting to his threshold. It looked like a woodpecker got after my chairs. My parents lived with me for many years. But anything, or they play the music really loud. And again, sometimes kids may get up to that, even those with a high threshold, they seek, they get up to the limit. We all have a limit. And now then we can go right into sensory sensitivity, and I can't take any more sound without lashing out at you. So it's important to think about these quadrants, knowing that it can be different for different parts of the sensory system. And I just thought this is a very important foundation. So, okay, let's move on. Now we're going to let's look at how this plays out. I thought, let's start with eating. We have a lot of kids with eating issues. Either parents come in saying, my kids overeat, my kids won't eat. There are eating disorders, body dysmorphia, picky eating. There's so many ways this can play out. And if the sense of smell and the sense of taste, as you can imagine, are very closely aligned. A lot of individuals who got COVID lost their sense of smell and sense of taste. And foods taste usually pretty similar to how they smell. So, but the sense of smell is not just tied to the sense of taste, it is tied to digestion. Do your kids have issues with bloating, constipation, diarrhea? Do they complain of tummy aches? The sense of smell impacts the acid in our saliva that starts breaking down food so we can properly absorb it without large molecules escaping and causing those stomach issues before we even swallow it, before it even gets to our intestines. It's tied to memory creation, emotional connection. I think most of us would have examples of this. When I moved a couple of years ago, I found a jar of CoverGirl face powder that I didn't even know I had. That is what my grandmother wore. I lost her in 1999. This was 2017. I opened that jar. The smell hit me, and suddenly I'm a 7-year-old girl back in Huntsville, Alabama, and we're having girl time. She would always come say, I'm going to put on my face. And that I would hang out in the bathroom with her while she got ready for church or whatever we were doing. And all those memories and all the laughs just came flooding back from that many years ago from smelling that face powder. And I know that y'all have experienced that as well. This is one reason why there are so much about family connection or getting together with friends centers around, let's have dinner together, right? So, it's also important for safety. I need to know this food's gone bad, don't eat it. I smell smoke, I need to get out of the building, that kind of thing. But what else is going on? Besides an inaccurate, if I don't smell and taste food accurately, I'm going to choose it based on some other parameters. It's too crunchy, too mushy, too smooth. I'll only eat this texture. I base it on what it looks like. And then kids get into these ruts of I will eat this and I won't eat this. Eating is one of the most sensory explosive experiences we have because you have texture, smell, taste, the look of it. There's so much to that. Or maybe they're smelling and tasting it accurately, but it is like a tactile issue with textures. So that can go either direction. Okay, what if they are eating all the time? One is they might be seeking body awareness input. Every time I chew, just like running, and the sense of the tactile sense and purpose, I'm getting information about my body and touch and that kind of thing. And proprioception and chewing gum, and I know this is not what people want to hear. Chewing gum is good for concentration. It is. So maybe consider that at homework time. Another part of this is that we have an internal sensory system. We talked about the big five. We talked about equilibrium and body awareness, which are kind of internal. They're not external stimuli that we take in. They're internal. But our internal sensory system helps our organs speak to us. You're hungry, you're full, you're thirsty. Some kids do not get the signal that they're full. And so they keep eating. And we told them, and they'll sneak food. And that can just look like such bad behavior, sneaky, dishonest. They might really think they're hungry. They may not understand the difference. And think about the nuance of satisfied versus stuffed. Right. That requires a lot of cognitive flexibility. And when the sensory system's not working properly, a lot of times kids are going to see things much more black and white, all or nothing. Now, what about then we have unfortunately, there's a huge link between neurodevelopmental struggles such as ADHD and eating disorders. One thing to know is that, unfortunately, when we purge, feel-good chemicals are released in the brain. I know it doesn't feel like it when you have a virus, but there are chemicals released. I don't want to go into the whole science of that. We won't ever get to another slide today. But if they're missing input in other ways, that gives them input in ways they're missing, unfortunately. But another thing is, if I am not really in touch with my body, we're going to look at body awareness thoroughly in a moment. A lot of times kids have body dysmorphia. What they see in the mirror is not what is. Okay? So I wanted to show you that all these things are very, very, very related to the sensory system. And this just shows you, we can't just say picky eating. Why do they have picky eating? What does that look like? There's so many factors. But if you will start logging these things, based on the information I'm giving you, patterns will start to emerge. And then there are things we can do to help. Okay, let's move on. Okay, don't ignore me on this one. Oh, my kid's very athletic, so they can't have equilibrium issues. Equilibrium issues often do not look like you think they do. Yes, it can look like clumsiness. It can be walking on toes. It can be bumping into things. But if my kids don't tell me they're dizzy, so that doesn't mean this. Most of the time, individuals with equilibrium issues are not dizzy just because they have equilibrium issues. This is your internal sense of being upright and balanced, having your bearings about you, feeling grounded. I was super athletic, and yet my equilibrium was toast, and nobody knew it because I was athletic. I was dizzy because I had eye tumors. It's much more common if you have a blow to the head or a tumor where different parts of your brain are processing motion differently. That leads to dizziness more than when it's just an overarching equilibrium issue. But do they have their bearings about them? 68% of students described as underperforming across this country from kindergarten all the way through high school, 68% have confirmed equilibrium issues. And that doesn't count the ones that haven't been assessed for it. Equilibrium issues can look like they fatigue easily. You might see them holding their head. They might complain of headaches or stomach aches. You might see them blinking, doing things with their eyes because visual and equilibrium are so closely aligned. They might withdraw. This is very tied to social withdrawal, very tied to decreased concentration, very tied to anxiety, very tied to mental health issues by the time you become a tween and teen. Visual perception issues that we're about to look at, sensory seeking or sensory avoidant with motion. Do your kids do they not want to go on the rides at Six Flags? Do they want to swing all the time? Do they hang upside down? Do they avoid motion? Do they swing me? They're seeking, avoiding. Either one of those can be an issue. Issues with memory, especially where did I put that? Where does this belong? Where does it go? Which then leads to organization issues. A lot of times little ones will be clingy to their parents. I don't have my bearings about me. So this looks like social anxiety, but really you are my anchor. I'm grasping hold of you because I don't feel grounded. I need this first. The equilibrium is the first part of the sensory motor system that we subconsciously process gravity, motion, space. I got my bearings. Now I can start processing everything else. So when this is awry, it leads to issues in the other parts of the system often. But some ways to work on this real quick. Freeze tag or freeze dance, anything where I'm moving. Now I'm still moving, still. Musical chairs, same thing. I love doing it with emotions. And whatever emotion you land on, you act it out. You talk about what makes you feel that way. Having kids do balancing activities, even if they seem to have good balance. Stand on one foot and then the other. Have them do it with their eyes open. But guess what? If I'm standing on one foot, my eyes are picking a spot on the wall to give me a point of reference. Mm-hmm. And then if I start to sway, my eyes let me know I am. And so I get back. Can I do it just based on equilibrium? Okay. Swinging is excellent. It resets your internal GPS. Equilibrium impacts a ton of our students who are super athletic. They may even get scholarships to college for sports. This does not mean they're not athletic. It does not mean they're dizzy. This is a huge, huge, huge cause of issues that is almost invisible if you don't know what to look for. Okay, I think I've stressed that enough. So let's move on. Now with visual spatial, this is visual perception and processing. If equilibrium is not in place, visual perception and processing aren't going to develop properly. Almost never. I just don't see it. Because I need my equilibrium and my eyes to work together to have gaze stability. I'm going down a bumpy road, but my equilibrium lets me know what's happening. My eyes can let me know that the world in front of me isn't having an earthquake. That is still, I'm the one that's moving. I can, in class, there's commotion. I can glance and check out what happened, but I kept my main focus on the teacher because I was oriented toward her. If this isn't working together, turn your whole head or your whole body. And now I'm once I'm facing here, that's where my brain goes. And then I'm no longer focused on the teacher. And it looks like ADHD. This can look like dyslexia because your eyes jump around where these red dots go. That shows how eyes are jumping around. Kids may write things in mirror reverse. They may have trouble with spelling, sounding out words. They may have difficulty. Oh, you're being sloppy. Are they being sloppy, or can they not tell the difference between N, H, and R? We don't think. Look how much similarity there is in those letters. Mm-hmm. A, Q, D. How far down does the stem go? That requires so much attunement with visual perception. Almost 25% of our brain's function goes to visual perception and processing. So any expert in my field will tell you these are among the most mentally and emotionally draining struggles you can possibly have. Kids, if you have kids who used to love reading and now they hate it, this might be why. I could kind of compensate for my eyes jumping around when I was reading just graphic novels and the font is big and there's a lot of pictures separating everything. But now that it's line, and the font's smaller, I hate it. Avoidance, task avoidance on this. Having difficulty following directions that involve over, under, between, beside, going to different rooms. That has to do with visual spatial. Some ways to work, and it can also make text look double. That does not mean I don't have 20/20 eyesight, believe it or not. All 20/20 eyesight means is that my eyes can see something 20 feet away that's this size. All these other things can be happening. Another thing do they not understand math, or are their eyes jumping around? 4, I see 16 fingers. Look at these two pictures that are kind of golden, black and white. Visual focus on the left, I'm only seeing one little part of that. I can't see the whole picture. We have a lot of kids who will take in the part of the chalkboard right in front of them. They don't take in the whole thing. Mom, I didn't know the assignment was due tomorrow, and the teacher says it was written on the board. It was over here. I was here. I couldn't take it all in. Or I'm talking to Jessica. I have horse blinds on because I can't take in. This was me big time. And somebody would come from the periphery. I would have no idea they were coming until they're right in front of me. I felt like I lived in a scary movie. Never knew when the next thing was going to pop up out of nowhere, even though that's not what's happening. There is no way that doesn't get your emotions churning. That happens at recess. We go back in for class, and now my emotional brain is in charge. I am more impulsive, more distracted. I am not regulated. Playing I Spy, Where's Waldo, scavenger hunts, all kinds of hand-eye coordination tasks. Keep in mind that writing requires visual perception and fine motor. That's not just about catching a ball, although that's a great thing to do. Obstacle courses, swinging, cards, match, sort, dominoes. How are these alike? How are they different? Find the difference. Memory. We have different kinds of memory. We have visual memory. We have auditory memory. So it's very important to work on that. Do these match or not when you turn over the cards for memory? That requires discrimination. Directional games. Simon Says, and have it involve left and right and over and under between. Okay, I could just do a whole show on every single one of these. Let's move on. Body awareness, like equilibrium, is more part of our internal sensory system. It is more than personal space, and it is more than social cues. Those are two biggies. If you have kids who hate baths, brushing teeth, brushing hair, that often has to do with body awareness. We have a lot of kids. My parents will say, my kids are way sensitive to smells. Something stinks, like something that nobody else can even smell. And yet they have body odor because they won't shower and put on deodorant, and they don't even seem to know it. We need body awareness also. So we don't want kids to be hung up on I have to have the coolest, latest clothes and be the most in-style person, superficial things. But if you have tweens and teens who have no concern about that, that is usually a sign of body awareness issues. There should be a certain level of awareness without it being a priority necessarily. We're talking about tweens and teens. That is a natural part of development on a certain level. But another thing that body awareness does is it is an internal warning signal. Jessica, have you ever taken a deep breath and you don't know why you did it? It was just out of the blue.
Oh, yes.
Like, that was random. So odd. Was I holding my breath? Why did I need oxygen? Body awareness tells us to do that. Let's say we're working on a task, and if a neutral emotion is a 0, let's say stress or frustration is going towards a 3. Body awareness is reading our internal environment, kind of body mapping for us. It sends us a signal that says, hey, you're starting to get a little frustrated, stressed. We're not even sensing that emotion yet. The body signal comes first. Because body awareness tells us that, we take a break, we take a breath, we grab some water, stretch our legs, we sit back down. The emotion went from 0 to 3, right back to 0. That's not even an emotional event. Kids with low body awareness can miss that signal, and it goes from 0 to we've worked on self-regulation. I didn't know I needed them. And now once the emotion's at 8, 9, 10, it is way harder to de-escalate. This impacts handwriting. If you have kids who drop their pencil or on the flip side of that, break crayons, the grasp, no matter how many times you work on it, isn't there. We shouldn't have to think about how hard should I hold the pencil? How hard should I press down? Anything that takes away from the automation of handwriting is highly predictive of decreased literacy and getting your thoughts onto paper. You're using all your fuel in the physical act of writing. I don't have any space left to think about what it is I wanted to say. And then it can look like kids aren't trying. They're not applying themselves. That doesn't even reveal 50% of what you know about this. And that may be why. Okay. Of course, personal space. We have some kids who are oblivious to signals. I mean, they're getting this. I have to feel my body, and I know that I'm smiling and I'm relaxed. So, and I connect that to happiness, and I like this friend. So if I see that friend doing that, it's reinforcing. This is good. She likes what I'm saying and doing. We're getting along. Likewise, I need to pick up on, that means she's mad. I need to apologize and redirect. So some kids miss the signals. Others will read in signals that are not there if what their communication partner is conveying to them is anything other than overt happiness and approval. And we don't always do that. So if you have kind of a flat face because you're busy, you're tired, you're like, come on, honey, I'm cooking dinner and fold clothes while we're talking. I'm not mad. If your kids ask you why you're mad, a lot of kids know the script. We live in emoji world. They know, they can look at a picture, happy, sad, mad, scared. When they're talking to someone, can they process the words and the nonverbals at the same time? Can they be taking notes and pick up on what that teacher is illustrating and emphasizing with little hand motion? That can lead to learning. There was fascinating research with the pandemic about part of the learning loss was because kids not having these issues were missing the nonverbal demonstrations that teachers were giving, all the nonverbals with virtual learning.
Yeah.
Okay. So lacking a sense of self, I have to know who am I before I can feel good about who I am. And where that starts is body awareness. I feel my body. Little ones recognize themselves in pictures, mirrors. I got a new friend. Wait, that's me. But body awareness keeps growing all the way through the teen years. If that falls short, I don't get to the deeper layers. I'm more than my body. I am my heart, my soul, my strengths, my values, our family culture, my struggles, my likes, my dislikes. We are all multifaceted. When kids don't have that, they often will think, I am who people say I am, or I am what I do. So I make a bad choice. I'm a bad person. Why even try? I'm stupid. I can't do it. And I'm not good enough to be this person's friend. So they tell me to jump. I say how high. Get taken advantage of. Bullying. People pleasing. Opting out. Perfectionism. I'm not good enough. So I think I can be the best at this game. And if I'm anything less than that, then I'm not good enough. So then you can see poor sportsmanship. Overly competitive, beating yourself up, rumination, rejection sensitivity. And rejection sensitivity is tied to rage, suicidal ideation. It goes on and on. You can imagine the social emotional issues there. Okay. How do we work on body awareness? Heavy work, anything where you are working the muscles, joints, tendons, connective tissues, push-ups, wiping, stirring, vacuuming, mowing, body socks. You can even if you have family meetings, like I've mentioned before, whoever is, toss a weighted ball, and whoever holds the ball, that's the person who has the floor.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Trampoline is great for equilibrium and body awareness. Match the picture. You see yoga moves down there, but any picture, let's match the picture. It takes body awareness for me to see if my body is doing what they're doing. Or you can say, I'm matching the picture. How am I doing? And have them show you how you're not matched. Like purposely do something that's not quite like the picture. Fun way to do it. Have them do a move and you model it or you mimic it and vice versa. Turn taking. Kids will get more engaged if they also are the leader sometimes on that. Weighted balls. Anything heavy work. Lifting, pushing, pulling, stirring, monkey bars. Monkey bars are so fantastic. Be sure somebody's there for safety because it works on body awareness because you're getting that tension in your muscles, joints, tendons, connective tissues. You're working on fine motor because you're grasping the bar. Brachiation, it's opening up. It is expanding your lung capacity for greater oxygen to the brain. So many things. I could go on. Okay, let's move on. One other thing I want to mention about body awareness is a lot of times kids with poor body awareness do not know what active listening looks like. Okay? Listening. All they think about is the ears. They may not think about, and for younger kids, you may need to have explicit conversations with older kids. I actually did a show about listening and gave examples through all the ages. But because we're talking about body awareness, they might need to be explicitly told. When we're listening, it's not just about the ears. Our ears are turned on. The brain is on. Our eyes are looking at the speaker. The mouth is closed. You point out what all the body parts are doing. That is required. And I've talked about body mapping before recently, so I won't go into that. But if your kids have some level of body awareness, make them aware that your body tells you you're getting frustrated before you feel the emotion, and have them start drawing pictures of how are you how are you feel, start noticing, like after they de-escalate after something, what did your body feel before that happened, and have them draw it. And then the idea is to start catching it, and then to start catching the signals earlier, and then do a self-regulation strategy. They might have butterflies in their stomach, tension in their shoulders, a headache, throbbing. They might feel like they need to use the bathroom. What are their signs? Do they start getting sweaty palms? Make them aware that your body gives you the message before the emotion does. Okay. And auditory processing. On a show fairly recently, I had part of this slide and then I added to it for this show. But I want you to see that auditory processing is more than following directions. It is an absolute foundational skill for reading, literacy, sounding out words. Mm-hmm. It is also oftentimes kids will seem rude when they have this. They may not realize the tone of voice they're using. They're not catching the differences. They may misperceive how you're talking to them. They may think you're being monotone or yelling, and you're not. Likewise, they may talk loudly. They may be perceiving noise at this volume, even though it's here, and they're talking loud enough to get over it. That's a sign of auditory processing struggles, even if they're straight A students. Distracted, they might be lacking a filtering system. Our brain is naturally supposed to tune out extraneous and select what to attend to. And sometimes with auditory processing issues, you hear all the noise or none of it. All none. Obviously, but I did a huge thing on this. This is very tied to brain efficiency, time management, hearing stress patterns that completely change the meaning. I think she should get the job. I think she should get the job. I think she should get the job. That is also auditory processing. And that rhythm and timing, we get it in our sensory motor system, and it leads to me understanding time. I have 45 minutes to take this test. I know what 45 minutes feels like. You might see poor rhythm and coordination in the body. You might see issues sequencing a story. Issues with they're always running late, or they keep asking you when, even though you've told them. I hear the words. I know you said 15 minutes. I have no idea what 15 minutes feels like. I look at my homework. I don't know if it's going to take 2 minutes or 2 hours. That's overwhelming. Peace out. But garbled message, distracted, tuned out, under responsiveness, sound sensitivity, missing pitch changes, intonation, how we emote, misinterpreting all kinds of pauses, envelope, cargo, which is freight, cargo, vehicle traveling. Think of all the ways this plays out. So as early as 3 years old, kids can start figuring out how puppets are feeling in a story. Think about that. The puppets' faces are not changing just based on the intonation, the tone of voice. That's a great way for young ones to work on it. If you have issues here, a lot of times kids are going to have issues with transition. Of course, that applies to a lot of the sensory system. I just got grounded. Now we have to move again. And now bumping into stuff. But also, yes, you gave me a countdown. You said in 5 minutes, then 2 minutes. That means nothing to me. So make it fun. Do silly walks, play game, sing songs during transitions. Estimate how long. This is really good for tweens and teens. How long do you think this assignment's going to take? And then time it and compare how long it took to how long they thought it would take. And then how can we adjust that next time? You can do the same thing with chores. Rhythm and clapping games. You pound out a beat, they beat it back. They do a beat, you mimic it. Motor practice, and of course music. Music lights up the entire brain. I mean, I don't know if there's hardly anything music doesn't work on in the brain. So, okay, let's move on. I know we got to wrap this up in a moment. 5 things to know about tactile play. Okay, so proprioception is more about deep pressure, body awareness. Tactile system is about light touch, pain, temperature, pressure, and of course the misinterpretation, like with all of these, can be over or under sensitivity. You have some kids that you constantly have to tell them to keep their hands to themselves. They are sensory seeking tactilely, from a tactile perspective. Others, you barely, low, like I know that it can be pretty cool. Like my child has a high pain threshold. It can also be dangerous. At a certain level, we have to feel pain. Oh, yeah. It can impact decision making. This is important for language and following directions. Touch gently. What does that mean? I don't feel the difference between gentle and rough. Think about a world full of just nouns and verbs, and we're missing the adjectives. Rough, smooth, silky, soft, hard. Don't touch that. It's hot and cold. What if you misperceive that? That can be really dangerous. Mm-hmm. So important. How do we encourage exploration? If your kids are super avoidant or sensitive, putting plastic wrap over the thing they're touching, they're starting to experiment, but there's a barrier there. Or they could have gloves on. This has worked wonders. When I worked in ECI, it's like, let your kids play with their food. And I know that's so like, what? I didn't say do it at a wedding, okay? I'm saying let them play with food. And I would do that. I would put plastic wrap like over their chair at the table and get them, exploring. And then the progression, you want to go from dry things. So maybe, just think about all the things out there. Kinetic sand, there's Play-Doh, all kinds of gooey, sticky, mushy, dirt. But you want to start with dry, then move to moist and non-sticky, and then move on to messy play. There's got to be a progression. You're kind of getting their tolerance set. But we don't force it. That is just going to be counterproductive. But here's something super cool and amazing about the tactile system. Growing tactile part of the processing is involved in empathy and pro-social behavior. Tons of research to back this up. The same part of the brain lights up for physical and emotional pain. So if I see a peer fall down off their scooter and I have an impaired sense of touch, I don't have as much empathy because I don't know what that feels like. And that part of my brain doesn't light up as much. But I know that hurt. And seeing that, we actually feel it. I mean, haven't you ever, my mom, oh my goodness, she is so hard to draw blood from, and they use the little preemie needles. Mm-hmm. Watching her, and I am not squeamish about shots or blood, but it's my mama, and like, it hurts so bad. I mean, they have to do it like 20 times, and her skin is so thin. I start feeling like sick to my stomach. I feel pain watching that. Mm-hmm. When we grow the tactile system, we are growing empathy, and the likelihood of kids serving others, doing things for the welfare of other people, very directly linked. I mean, brain circuitry wise. Okay, let's move on. And so we talked about emotions, behavior. When kids are struggling with the sensory motor system, they are very likely to spend quite a bit of their life in the fight or flight or freeze mode. We have a fight or flight system to keep us safe. Like, okay, there's a guy trying to attack me. I want fight or flight to kick in because it makes me safer. My oxygen, blood, glucose, all the nutrients are drawn from our brain into our extremities so we can fight off the bad guy. We can run faster. We can think faster. We can hit harder to be safe. What if you go into this mode in the absence of physical threat? The sensory information that I'm not processing correctly comes through the brainstem. The amygdala, the guard dog that is supposed to keep us safe, gets overactive. You're not safe. Kids viscerally, body-wise, go into a fight or flight, and they may say or do things that are not at all in keeping with how you're parenting them or who they are, their character, their soul. It's not about that. They are in survival mode. Sensory issues put you there. Look, these are some of the top needs of kids for what do I need to learn and grow? And some of these, well, you're thinking, yes, of course. I need emotional, physical safety, to be loved, self-worth, attention. I need to be understood, a sense of belonging, relationship, connection, predictability. I need some control, competent. I need to grow in independence. This starts in preschool. But look, on this list, stimulate my senses and interest. If your kids are bored, might it be that they are not, there is a threshold issue with their sensory system. They're being exposed to it, but they're not registering it, so it's not engaging for them. This is on a list of safety and us needing to be the calm and kid storm. They need the proper stimulation of the senses and to recognize this and modify the environment accordingly. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for all that amazing information that you shared with us today. As you can see, these are all of the ways that you can stay in touch with Heather and your local brain balance centers in Texas. Heather, is there anything else that you would like to say before we sign off today? That was like a lot of information.
It was a lot. I just real quick, these are pictures of me, and I just want you to see. Like, look at Christmas. I'm in this little pink thing. I cannot see. My equilibrium's a mess. I chewed on my little purse handle. I'm getting tactile perceptive, and we're picture for the church. What is it called? Directory. Yeah. I didn't know where the camera was. I'm not looking in the right place. And again, I am seeking proprioceptive input here. Mm-hmm. Eye patch. Anyway, and then my sweet daddy who made the car shake, and my mom she has apraxia after her stroke. This is very near and dear to me. But the only thing I'll say is I do send out a weekly newsletter. And if you would like to receive that, it goes out every Saturday. And just shoot us a message and we'll get you added to that list. And I want to thank you for your time and hope you all have a great week.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon.